In endurance leadership, not every push to stop is actually based on wisdom, but not every drive to keep moving forwards is courage either. So I'm Suzanne Rath, and you're listening to Endurance for your daily dose of endurance leadership and life lessons. And today's episode is inspired by a friend of mine who has just summited Everest. For somebody who is obsessed, as I am, with people actualizing their full potential, like doing the things that actually have meaning to them, I cannot stop following posts. I have never been so invested in what is happening on the Everest summit scene this year as now. And today I was reading her rundown. I actually read it 3 times. Her name is Jen Willis, if you want to connect with her on the socials. And she is Australian, living with MS, tried to climb in 2023. And today, or this year, sorry, not today, but this year she summited. So incredible. But what struck me when I was reading this post about the summit was that point at which she was bargaining with herself. So she got to Camp 4 and, there was all these decisions that had to be made, as there often are when you're doing a massive event like that, around, do you keep going? Do you sleep? Do you push on? Is the weather bad? Is it bad enough to stop? Do I need the rest? Do I need to keep going? All of these things. And she talks about how in her mind, she was kind of thinking, well, even if I just make it to this point, even if I don't make the summit, like maybe that's enough. And I'm familiar with this thing of bargaining with myself in endurance events. And I think a lot of us bargain with ourselves in business and in life as well. So when I was doing Sydney to Newcastle, I woke up after 45 minutes sleep on the 4th morning. And I had never intended to go past a 4th morning. So I had always said, if it gets to Tuesday morning, I'm done. But because of a series of events, it took longer than I thought it would. And so I woke up after my 45 minutes sleep and I thought, you know what, I'm going to get up and I'm not even going to be able to walk. What's the point? And so I'd started bargaining with myself, saying, well, I've already done my first miler, which is 100 miles. This isn't an organized event. Nobody really cares. I've already come really far. And I was trying to talk myself out of it. And today on the podcast, I was thinking about the difference between when we talk ourselves out of something that is actually a big vision and it does actually mean something to us, versus when we give up on something that's a goal. So I did complete that Sydney to Newcastle run, largely thanks to my friend basically saying, look, you're fine, and us getting up and actually me feeling kind of okay, which is amazing what your body can do. But there are so many goals and things that I have let go of in my life, and themes for my year and all these kind of things that, like, I might start the year or I might start the quarter or I might, have a business coach or all these things that seem like a great idea at the time that I've actually let go of, or they have taken place but in a different format to what I maybe originally thought they would. Like the end goal or the journey looked different to how I thought it would. And most of those things actually sit kind of okay with me. And the reason being that maybe I realized that they didn't align, or maybe I moved the goalpost slightly, or maybe I realized I needed to change pace or to pivot, or maybe something else came up and it was just a different chapter of my life. And I thought, you know what, I need to actually, this is not going to happen this year, but it might happen in these 3 years. There's all these different reasons. And so I think it's a really important conversation to have around, are we quitting on a goal because it's just getting hard? Like, is the problem discomfort, but the goal really, really aligns with something that's meaningful to us? Or are we quitting on something when it's no longer aligned with where we want to be? So a couple of thoughts that I had around this. If we're bargaining because things are getting hard, so, we're on Everest, or we're on whatever a personal version of Everest might be, because I certainly can't proclaim to have done anything as hard as Everest, and I've done some pretty hard things. But are we bargaining with ourselves out of fear or out of discomfort? And some of the signs of that might be saying things like, oh, maybe I don't really need this. Whereas in a normal state of mind. You know, if you're not tired, if you're not sick, if somebody else isn't getting your ear, all of these different variables, you actually do really want the thing. Going, oh, it's just hard, or I'm tired of uncertainty, like all of those things are actually signs that you're on the precipice of growth. Or the good old imposter syndrome one, maybe I'm just not the kind of person who does this. Like maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm not set out for this. Like all those things are fear-based, and you're potentially bargaining with yourself. And like I said, it can sometimes happen before growth. It can happen if things are ambiguous. And as leaders, we have to be able to sit with that ambiguity. It can happen when we're moving to a new identity. It can happen when the progress is a bit slower than we hoped it would. Or it can happen when motivation disappears. And this is why we need the frameworks to connect back to something else other than motivation. So in endurance sport, there's actually research showing that our perceived effort rises when uncertainty rises. So if we're in the middle of a race or an event, like say I did, when, you know, we got lost or there was flash flooding or whatever, things actually suddenly start to get really hard because your brain's starting to conserve energy and reduce exposure to threat. But the times at which you might look at a goal just not aligning is if none of the work actually seems good. So, you know, the goal doesn't actually, you think to yourself, do I really want this? Like, where has this idea come from? Did somebody just tell me it was a good idea? If the cost to it is greater than the meaning, and truly greater, so you are trying to scale your business because you want to have more security or eventually more time with your family, but you realize in the process of that, you're actually not having any time with your family. And you can't see the time at which you are going to be able to free yourself to have more time with your family. If you're pursuing it for ego. So I think that entering awards and doing all these things and getting external recognition is really important. It's important to feel like we have a seat at the table. But we need to not be doing every single thing for ego. And if we're just constantly reliant on people telling us that we're great, that's different to having a support system, like I talk about in Endures. But, you know, if we can't find that internal validation, that internal connection to purpose ourselves, then that's a bit of a problem. Again, if we're sacrificing things that we deeply value, so whether it's our health, whether it's our trips, whether it's time with our family, whether it's time with friends, those sacrifices are okay in the short term because you're in a different chapter of your life, but you have to be choosing to do that. And if this becomes a long-term sacrifice that's really not aligning with you, it might be time to change pace on the goal, to pivot the goal, or to ditch the goal altogether. And of course, then, as I mentioned, just that need to change pace, right? Maybe the goal can't be achieved this year, but maybe it can be achieved in 3 years, and just being a little bit nicer to yourself. So I'm going to close out today just to remind you that elite athletes don't hold the same pace all year round, and they have B races as well as A races, and they have times where they're recovering. And you as a leader, or as a person, a leader of your life, don't need to either. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you tomorrow for more from Endures.